Okay. It is confirmed we are indeed live with another edition of the 4GwQPodcast podcast. This is episode number 188 for November 1st, 2018. Excited to get into the topics tonight. Big Red Dead Redemption 2 night this evening. Game came out last week. Unfortunately, being on Thursday, when a game comes out on Friday, we get to the end of the week, end of our podcast cycle, if you will, before we talk about it. But we have a man with us tonight who is well versed on the topic, and we've been wanting to get in the show for a little while here now. And he does all the podcast rounds. He was on RDX for a while. We've been on Iron Lords podcast last week. This week we got you. We had the Iron Lords on 2 weeks in a row, actually, the past couple weeks, and now we're excited to have JFonzerrelli on to join us this week. What's going on, man?
Hey, man, thanks for the invite. I appreciate it. Like all you guys here on this podcast, I follow you guys. Good to be here, man. Can't wait to talk about these topics.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I know a lot of people that are watching the show are probably like, deeply entrenched in Red Dead Redemption 2. You have your opinions, you have your feelings on the game. We'll go into not only the game, but also the controversies surrounding the visuals with the HDR and all that nonsense. And actually, Fonz is probably the perfect person to have on for this, because I'm pretty sure you were the first person on Twitter, at least, that I saw that mentioned that something was a little bit off between the standard, the SDR and HDR, and I was like, and when the story broke that that was actually legit and tested, and I was like, holy shit, this guy nailed it right on the money. He's better be patting himself on the back.
Well, the thing is, see, I'm an early adopter of the HDR tech. I'm into TVs and stuff, so I'm not the most tech savvy person out there. But when it comes to knowing what I see and knowing what HDR is supposed to do, I knew right away something was wrong. And I suspected that it was elevated black levels, and sure enough, that's exactly what was going on. So basically, they just took the SDR, metadata and just sort of upscaled it to HDR, just like they fit the 8-bit metadata into 10-bit, and they didn't add any of the wide color gamut. They didn't add anything special to it at all. But what it did was kind of break the black levels, and I saw it right away. I mean, as soon as I looked at it, I was like, yeah, something's wrong here, guys. And I had so many people coming down on me on Twitter going, no, you just don't know what HDR is about. This is their visual, this was their intentions. This is what they wanted the game to look like. And I just knew something was up. So when I was finally vindicated, 2 days later, I was vindicated by HDTV Tech on YouTube. Vincent there, great guy, professional calibrator. He came out and said, yes, it is bad, it's wrong. So, I mean, at least I was vindicated there. So yeah, I gave myself a little pat on the back, because I had a lot of people hating on me for saying that,
Yeah,
but
I hear you, man. I hear you. So we'll get into that in a little more depth in just a second. Let me introduce the other two gentlemen here with us this evening. One man who's done everything possible to make it here for his 188th straight appearance. I hope he is still officially with us and can speak with us this week. Last week it was a little dicey, but this week I think he's A-okay. It's ZBCI Assassin. What's going on, bud?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes. Oh my goodness. Thank God. Man, last week it was dicey. I don't know. It was borderline whether or not we could count, it being a, on the streak for the appearances, but you did make it for the end. You made it for the beginning. So I counted it. I think it was fair game. So appreciate you doing everything possible to get here this week. And unfortunately, that includes turning the video off to save some bandwidth or whatnot, or some CPU power. But appreciate you being here. Last but not least, we have Italian Clowns. What's going on, bud?
Oh, what's up, man?
Nothing much. Just games. Got potentially the game of the generation here, facing us right in the eye, ready for us on our Xboxes or PlayStations, no matter, whatever platform you guys are playing on, and maybe PC next year. Who knows? Talked about that a couple weeks ago, how a couple of retailers leaked that, and also Resume Listing, I think, on LinkedIn that leaked that Red Dead Redemption 2 is coming to PC next year, and I think that's a smart choice, obviously, but for now, we have it on Xbox, we have it on PlayStation, and the Xbox One X version is, the definitive version to get if you have both options. But if not, PlayStation versions are no slouches either, for sure. But yeah, just some quick, hard numbers to throw at you before we get opinions from the panel about this game, now that we've finally been able to play it, some more than others. And Fonz is rocking like 3 days of playtime right now, but we won't get into that. But Metacritic sitting at a 97. I think that's where it's finally going to sit for both platforms. Obviously very good, 97 out of 100. And game did $725 million in gross sales in only 3 days, which is a record, in fact, for any entertainment medium, which is actually very, very good and super impressive because, movies usually do pretty well. Obviously, $725 million is nothing to sneeze at, whether it's a movie or a video game. But gaming is, I think, a little more niche than movie watching, so that's certainly indicative of how much this game was anticipated. So, bravo to Rockstar for producing another excellent game, which we knew they probably would, but obviously this kind of validates that people are eating this thing up, so to speak. So yeah, with that out of the way, Fonz, I want you to start because you definitely have had the most playtime, and I heard you talk about it last week on Iron Lord's podcast about your time with this game, and you've made a few YouTube videos on your own YouTube channel, which is in the info below on the YouTube description, so go check out his YouTube channel as well. Really knowledgeable stuff over there, especially about this game. But not considering the HDR tech and all that stuff, Fonz, what do you have to say about this game? Like, did it meet your expectations? Did it meet your anticipations? Are you 100% happy with it? Tell us all the answers to all those.
Okay. Let me just get some bad out of the way. The controls aren't perfect. The controls are very Rockstar. They're very, they've still got that little bit of clunkiness to it. I don't know if it was, well, I know it was by design, of course. They purposely made the controls this way, but I can only speculate that the controls were put this way for more realistic purposes, maybe. The weighty feel when you're moving the character, following through with each animation before you can move to another animation, that sort of thing. But when it comes to the aiming controls, I wish they could just do a little bit better job there in the future. But aside from that, I have no issues with this game. It is just a complete joy to play through. I swear this game, honestly, at the beginning of this year, or close to the beginning of the year, when we had God of War drop, God of War was my game of the year for sure, and my game of the generation. But this
really,
wow, this game's already surpassed it. And I'm only halfway through the game. So I mean, the only thing that can happen here is if the story takes a sudden dive, and I just hate it at the end. That's the only thing that can change my mind at this point. But right now, it's my game of the year for sure.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are there with you. And, a lot of comparisons between this and God of War. And a lot of people who are huge God of War fans, which it sounds like you are a pretty big God of War fan yourself. But
definitely.
A lot of people who are diehard God of War fans, in any other year, that game would be game of the year. I mean, that game was excellent. I mean, Assassin here has played the shit out of that game. I haven't finished it, unfortunately, because of a little bit of time restraint. But everything I've played on God of War, I have really, really liked. And I would say that is, right up there for game of the year in my mind as well. And in any other year, that would run away with the title, I think. People want to say Forza Horizon 4. That's an excellent game, but racing is not necessarily a genre where, they take home a lot of the hardware in terms of game of the year. It's hard to argue for a racing game to win game of the year, even though that game is extremely fleshed out. But that being said, I mean, you agree, like in any other year, God of War is there, right?
Yeah. Oh, most definitely. This 2018 has been a year of some great games, some amazing games. And it's finally, it's kind of sad to see. And this is how it goes every generation, but it seems like towards the end of every generation, that's when you start getting the great, fantastic masterpiece games. And that's what we're starting to see now. And we're getting close to the end of this gen. next year we might get the PS5. I mean, that's how close it is. But I just, this game though, I will add to what I said earlier and just say, Rockstar has built one of the most detailed world I've ever played through. And that is one of the reasons why I hold this game in such high regard. It's the fact that it's just so detailed, so immersive. I feel like I'm actually playing as this character through this world. It's more like Cowboy Sim than just a video game. It's really, really good. That's the way I feel anyway about it. I know a lot of people don't like it. They're bored. They don't like some of the RPG elements they added into it, but I, for one, love it. I love everything that they added, because again, it just immerses me more into this whole world.
Yeah, and honestly, Red Dead Redemption 1 is, and I heard you on ILP last week revise your top 5 games of all time and put it right at the top. And you know what? I'm not too far behind you, man. Honestly, I think Red Dead Redemption 1 was one of my favorite games of all time. Certainly in my mind, when I recall games in the past that, you know, maybe occupied that number 1 spot, like Ocarina of Time or like Final Fantasy 7, or really even like Final Fantasy 10, which I love the hell out of. You know, games like that have held that top spot for me. I think I've had more fun and a lot, you know, more story engagement and enjoyment and immersion with Red Dead Redemption 1. And I thought to myself, you know, Red Dead Redemption 2, is that going to be an evolution or is it going to be a continuation of the mechanics? And I thought, you know, if they just continued, it's going to, you know, that's probably going to get slammed, you know, and you got so much next gen tech that you can work with to make it not necessarily better, but more fleshed out, you know, whether it's like cloud computing, whether it's just like onboard computing, whether it's, you know, different visual techniques and engines that allow for so much more interaction between the character models and the environments and all that stuff. There's just so much more they could do. And I'm like, how is Red Dead Redemption 2 going to encompass that, you know, whether, and it's the little things. It's like, you know, losing your hat, like knocking off your hat, or, you know, carrying your kill to sell, or for all these challenges where, you know, you have to go get remote things, or, you know,
I had an instance where I had a hat blown off of me. It was shot off, and I picked it up and it had a bullet hole in it, and it had a bullet hole in it for the hours that I played with it. And then I lost the hat, and I was like, damn it, I wish I still had that hat, because I wanted to see if it was still there the whole game, that bullet hole. But I lost the hat.
It's those little things, man. It's those little things that make, you know, that just immerse you even more, that take, you know, a great game and make it, you know, one of the best of all time. It's the small little things. It's not even necessarily that they needed to, you know, reinvent the wheel to make this a really successful game, since Red Dead Redemption 1 obviously was incredible. But it's just, it's a lot of the little things, I think, in this game that really resonate with gamers, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm wondering how these other guys feel about it. Have they played it?
I thought Assassin would butt in here because he's been playing a bunch of it. And I hope, are you still with us, Assassin?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Oh my God. Yes.
Hello.
Thank God. Thank you. Yeah, very clear. Go ahead.
So I only put in a few hours. I was kind of a little here, a little there, because a bunch of crap was going around my house last few days. I did get to the point where, I mean, it's not really a spoiler, where you get your first, you buy your first horse. You know, you go to the stable, you buy it. I was just looking at like all these options, like, because, you know, I was expecting, you know, you just buy a horse, you know, whatever. But then, you know, like you guys said, it's the little things. Like, you customize your horse to like everything, your hair, you know, your saddle, your little, like, your bed that's on the back. Like, I thought that was just so cool that you could customize all this. And then you can name it like anything. So you can name it, you know, some things that Inferno names. I go into detail because, but I mean, you can name it those things. I'm like, yes. And times I felt like, I mean, it's to be expected, the game to be a little bit slow. I mean, because you are just riding on a horse. It's not like you have like a car that can go like 200 miles per hour. So I'm kind of nagging on that a little bit, but I mean, it's to be expected. I felt is Red Dead Redemption 1. I played that a few months back, and I felt this was so slow.
Yeah, I mean, the beginning of the game, I'm not going to call it a spoiler because a lot of people have played it, and, people who watch videos, how the game opens with, going through the snow and raiding that shack and all that stuff. I thought that was kind of slow. I thought, I heard somebody talk about the first couple hours being a little too much cutscene, but honestly, I think that worked in its favor because it built the story up right away. You got to know these characters and you got to understand them for who they were and understand the dire circumstance they were in, like, right away. So I didn't mind too much. Is that how you felt too, Fonz?
Yeah, I felt the same way. I didn't feel it was slow at all, actually. Here's the one thing I love about Rockstar. They can tell a great story. And when they opened up with that whole opening sequence, they had these charismatic characters. The head of the gang, Dutch Vanderland, I mean, he's as charismatic as it gets. It's really interesting to hear what he's got to say and everything at all times. And I just love the way this game gave me a very Tarantino vibe, like Hateful Eight, at the beginning.
Yes.
And I was all in, and I was like, wow, from the first hour, I was like, geez, because the first hour, let's face it, it was part storytelling, part tutorial. Because that's where they taught you how to hunt first. That's how they taught you how to ride your horse, shoot the guns, do the basic things. But it was just all an epic experience to open this game up that way. And I know for some people, it's kind of polarizing in the community because some people saw it as boring. I saw it the total opposite. And I know other people are with me as well. But again, other people are with the other side. They feel it was boring. At no point have I felt so far that I've been bored in this game. Again, though, I respect opinions. And Assassin, with you with the first Red Dead Redemption, you felt that was a little slow, maybe boring. Not me. I mean, yes, it's slow paced, but that was a game I was also immersed in. I really love that game. I hold that game up. That's my number one game of all time because of that storytelling and everything that went along with that game. But this game here, I don't know. Time will tell if it's going to top, Red Dead Redemption 1. But right now, I just have to say that I'm in love with this game. It's freaking great, guys. It's awesome. And this is why I love being a gamer. Is games like this, because games like this only come around once every generation, it seems. And this is the game I'm in this hobby for right here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of people were joking when beforehand when they were like, oh, we know it's going to be in the high 90s because it's a Rockstar game, and of course people are going to be calling it game of the generation, whether it is or it isn't. But I feel like for the amount I've played, and I know you've played a ton more than me, and for hearing a lot of other people who've played the game, I mean, everybody in my friends list is playing this. I feel like everybody is kind of backing up those claims. You joke around about it being game of the generation before the game even comes out, and then the game does come out, and not a lot of people are disappointed, man. Not a lot of people are disappointed.
Again, you have Supersonic Station in the chat saying, he's bored, he can't get into it. And I respect that. Some people, I've told people, if you're not into Red Dead Redemption, you're probably not going to be into this game. And that's been kind of what's been going on. That's been the trend. I know some friends that didn't like the Red Dead Redemption, so they're not into this. And it was kind of expected there. But as far as like the Metacritic score, I was guessing, which is still high, about a 92, I was guessing. And that's just because of the slow pace of these games. I figured, most of the journalists aren't going to be like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. So even though Red Dead Redemption, I think it scored a 95, which was great too. I just thought in this day and age, with everybody loving Fortnite and all these multiplayer games, I figured, this single player experience, because it's not fast and in your face and explosions everywhere, that it just might not rate very high. But I was wrong.
But you were wrong, indeed. But honestly, like I think there are people like that are like Assassin, and that and I'll let you respond to this, Assassin, if I'm on point here, that once they get into it and they get the cowboy action they were expecting from stuff like the trailers and from what has been seen in the old Red Dead and what has been seen in other Rockstar games recently, that all the high action, and people were saying, oh well, we should expect GTA with cowboys. For a lot of people that haven't played Red Dead Redemption, they're expecting like that level of action. And in some parts of this game, and in some parts of Red Dead Redemption 1, especially the ending of Red Dead Redemption 1, there are a lot of enemies and there is a lot of action, and there's a lot of accuracy that you have to perform well, or you could be stuck. I don't want to give away the ending of the first game because it totally caught me off guard, but there were a lot of guys coming at you at the end of that first game, and that's what I think a lot of people are expecting throughout the whole thing. But they've got to build you up somehow. Is that what it's like, Assassin? Like, that once you get further into it, or I mean, you are kind of a few hours in now. I mean, do you feel like it's picked up enough that you're gonna want to finish it, or are you kind of thinking it's still slow?
The only slow parts are really like the ones where you're just on a horse. You have it's a long distance between point A and B. They're not speaking as much. You're kind of just there, getting. That's like the slow parts. Like once you're like off the horse, or they're talking to you, giving you story, like that's fine. Like I'm all for that, but it's just like those long silent trips. Those are the slow parts.
Mm-hmm.
So other than that, like, good game.
Now, Assassin, did you know that you can put it in cinematic mode when you're traveling?
Yeah, I saw some of those videos where they were like, it's great, and then they hit a train,
crash into a horse. Yeah. Good. Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah. Sometimes that will happen. I haven't had the train thing happen, but guys will come out of nowhere, other outlaws, and they'll come try to attack you, and sometimes your horse will run right into their horse and you'll just fall over. It's hilarious though. But yeah, I put it in cinematic mode when I'm going from point A to B. Plus there is a fast travel that opens up later if you buy what you need to buy. So I definitely recommend upgrade your campsite, guys. That's how you get the fast travel. Works well.
Yeah, and would you say that this has a lot more RPG elements than the first game? Like, would you say there's more of a focus on that, or would you say there's about the same?
Yes. And a lot of people are see, this is another polarizing thing. Some people don't mind having those extra RPG elements, taking care of yourself, whether it's eating, sleeping, taking a bath, or taking care of your horse. People are like, it's kind of tedious for me. I don't like having to deal with that. I just want to run around and shoot things. Red Dead Redemption is not GTA. And I tell people this all the time. Do not try to GTA Red Dead Redemption. It does not work. It didn't work in the first game. It's not working here. This is more of a slow paced game. Do what you got to do. And now with the addition of these RPG elements, I feel like it just immerses you more into this whole game. I find myself only having to do it maybe once every 40 minutes or so, like, whether it's brush my horse or feed it or feed myself or get some sleep. It's not very often. I'm not, the sleeping part's not every 45 minutes, but the rest of it, it's not often to me, to have to eat or whatever. It's not a big deal, but you can tell when your character gets tired too. He'll visually slump over and you can see that he's exhausted. And if he gets into that mode, you better put him to sleep. Give him some sleep, give him some food, and he'll be all right, a few seconds later.
Yeah, I think that element of it is a little overstated by people that weren't expecting it. It's, I haven't gotten into a situation where I've needed, like, where I've had to do that, or else I'm gonna, lose an engagement with other outlaws or anything. I've always been able to find myself in an area where I could eat or sleep or whatever. But people are kind of pretending. I don't want to say pretending, but they're exaggerating to the point where they think that they're equating this with a survival game, like State of Decay or something like that, where you absolutely need to keep your eye on those meters, or else you're gonna get into a situation where you're screwed. I mean, don't let those kind of things take this game over for you. I feel like a lot of people are just putting negative And you said it right. It's a polarizing thing, but I feel like a lot of people are just treating it negatively.
And you've also got the taking care of your guns aspect as well.
True.
You have to clean your guns or they'll start to degrade. The thing is, it's not going to completely destroy your gun if you're not cleaning your gun every freaking hour even. All it does is just take away a little bit of damage from that gun or accuracy. So every once in a while, just clean your guns. I mean, take it out. You can visually see when they're dirty too. It's cool. And that's another thing I like, the detail they put in there, that when you pull out your gun, you can see the dirt on your gun. You can see when it has to be cleaned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's not like this mystery. Like, people are treating it like it's like some sort of mystery where it pops up on them out of nowhere. I mean, pay attention. I hate to say that. I don't want to talk down on people, but it's like you're. I feel like because of how good the game is and the kind of anticipation that it's had, people are just looking for things to nitpick about it, which I hate. And that's one of the things that has come up a lot. Like you said, it's very polarizing. I've seen that a lot on Twitter about the survival aspects, and it's kind of like, I'm just happy that they're there. I'm happy that there's another depth to this game that makes it.
Can you imagine a game like just having another Red Dead Redemption without any new mechanics? I mean,
yeah, right.
I mean, it would be fine. I would still play through the game and be happy and play it. But I think these added elements really do immerse you even more. I think it really does. I mean, having to take care of your horse, another entity, another living and breathing creature is a big deal to me, because you form a special bond with your horses and you want to make sure they're taken care of, and having to feed them and stuff just gives you that extra element of immersion there. And I know I'm saying immersion a lot, guys, but that's the key element of this game. It's all about immersion. And if you're not immersed into this world, you're not going to like it as much as, say, I do or somebody else may. Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the things that people lose sight of in video games nowadays. A lot of people are, like I said earlier, into the Call of Duties and the Fortnites and stuff. You really don't get immersed into that stuff. It's just this quick action, satisfaction you get from all that stuff, just blowing things away. Whereas this is like, hey, slow your roll, take your time, get immersed into this world and sort of live it through this character, and this is why I like video games, is stuff like this, games like this.
Absolutely agree. I think that was very well put, and I think that's kind of like where this generation has gotten to, and why people are talking about the elimination of single player games and all this nonsense that I don't think is going to happen, but that's why people are suggesting it, because they're just looking for that quick satisfaction. This game is definitely not it. And we were talking a little bit before the podcast about that anxiety that I think some people get, including me, that you see this game, it's going to take a lot of your life, and that may like stop you from playing it. If you're looking, you look on your shelf, you've got maybe Black Ops 4 and you've got Red Dead Redemption 2, you can get a few rounds of Black Ops in, or Fortnite or whatever, or you play a couple hours of Red Dead and maybe you don't get too much of anywhere. I mean, I saw somebody online say they played like 8 hours today and made no story progress in Red Dead Redemption 2, and you can do that. And that can worry some people. And if you're that kind of gamer that does worry you to the point of not playing the game, it's probably not for you, and that's okay. Like, you're your own gamer. You don't have to, listen to us or see that Metascore and say, oh, I absolutely have to play this game. If you're not that kind of gamer, like, it's just not for you. It's fine.
Yeah. And just because, some people out there give this game a 10 doesn't mean you have to agree that it's a 10. It just means that they put it on a different level. And again, when journalists or when anybody gives a game a 10, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're saying the game is perfect. They're just saying that the game is one of the best games they've played, and for various reasons, for their own reasons. And it's all about respecting opinions. And again, that seems to be a lost art form these days too, people respecting each other.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, it's just a game at the end of the day, but it's a good one. It's a damn good one.
Absolutely. Clowns, we haven't heard you on this. Yeah, go ahead. Butt in here.
I got a chance to play Red Dead Redemption 2, although I have it on PS4 and Xbox One. So I plan on getting into it. I've been sucked into the world of AC Odyssey, and I'm pretty much immersed into that world because I'm really big on those mythologies and things like that. So I thought it was kind of cool. But I know once I get into Red Dead 2, I'm not going to play anything else. I love the first one tremendously, and I took my time with that. I didn't rush it through it or anything. I spent days and hours and nights on that game just exploring the world because I think they just did a fantastic job. And to hear they added new mechanics, like Fonz was saying, I'm really excited to get into this game. I have like a whole week dedicated just to this game because I know I'm going to love it.
So I got to add to what you're saying here. So I took vacation for a week for this game. And I've been playing it nonstop since it dropped midnight, last week. And I'm over 70 hours into this game, and I'm only halfway through the story. And I thought for sure I'd be done with it by now with the story, but I can't help it. This game is so good to do other things, even aside from this great story. There's hunting, fishing, camping, all kinds of stuff you can do. And the side missions are even great. Like I've been doing a bunch of those, and it's kind of like I'm putting it off the end because I don't want it to end.
Mm-hmm.
But once I go back to work, this is all I'm going to be thinking about if I don't beat this game.
Yeah, and I know it's a feeling I'm going to have too, Fonz. Like if I got something coming up or interrupting me during playing this game, I'm like, oh, damn it. Can I just get back to Red Dead Redemption 2?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, this is the single player game to beat right now, I would say. I mean, I know a lot of people are loving AC Odyssey. I know I'm definitely going to pick that up on Black Friday. I've liked a lot of what I've seen. But this is, I think this is the game that, it doesn't feel, I don't think this game feels super repetitive. That's the thing that I don't really like about Assassin's Creed games too much. But I mean, I will do it because I like I said, I do like what I've seen. But I think the Red Dead Redemption 2, I think that there isn't like, even though you can do some side missions and some activities like hunting that you do have to go after the same kind of animal and stuff like that. I think that because the world is so different and vast, I think that nothing feels like super repetitive to the point where you're just gonna, get bored of it,
Yeah, exactly. I'll tell you this. I played Origins, okay, Assassin's Creed Origins, and there was a lot of repetitive quests, a lot of fetch quests and stuff that I was doing over and over.
Mm-hmm.
And this game, I can assure you, every mission I've done, include whether it's main or side, I have not played the same type of mission over and over. The only repetitive thing I will say in this game that does pop up is the random encounters, which is like somebody standing on the side of the road saying, "Hey, help, I've been bit by a snake," or something, that sort of thing. And all you do is like give them a remedy or suck out the poison, stuff like that.
Right.
That kind of stuff will pop up every now and then when you're traveling through the world. That's the only repetitive thing, but I don't really knock it for that because again, that's not part of the missions. That's not, anything that's really important to the game. But yeah, that's the only repetitive stuff you'll find.
Right. If you thought the hunting and the side missions were, if you treat that as extracurricular, that is like those side of the road activities are super extracurricular. I mean, you can get through the whole game and just completely bypass all that. So,
I'm curious if Assassin can still hear us if he's not frozen yet. Opinion is because I know that he played through AC Odyssey and beat the game. And now he's into Red Dead Redemption 2. And at the beginning of AC Odyssey, he said that AC Odyssey was his game of the year contender. At the end of the game, he's like, "Oh, the story got weak." So I'm curious, like, how he's feeling about Red Dead compared to his time in AC Odyssey.
Oh my god. Well, I mean, it's hard to compare because I think I put 80 hours into AC and I put like 4 into Red Dead.
Right. And remember, Assassin, if you do remember that on this program, when you first started AC Odyssey even, you thought that game wasn't too great. And you were kind of knocking it for little things here and there.
Yeah, because the story picked up, and then it was, combat, I still don't care for the combat in AC Odyssey. I prefer the old Assassin's Creed combat.
Mm-hmm.
It just feels like Red Dead, like all the characters, you get to know them more than like an Assassin or just an Ubisoft game in general. Like Ubisoft games, I feel like they just throw characters at you, and like you might know some from history, you might not, and then they just kind of expect you to know these guys. Like you go to Red Dead, and you might know some of these guys from the first Red Dead. You might, maybe not, but then you can, you can kind of know what, they're all about,
Right.
And then like John Marston, like you see him, and then like you can.
Whoa,
see,
spoilers, dude.
It's okay, so
I know, I'm kidding. Good.
But like you can see like what kind of made him like as the way as as in the first game,
right?
You saw in the first.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty happy that this is a prequel. Like I thought, or a prequel of sorts, right? I thought that it was gonna be, not as cool because I was so immersed in Red Dead Redemption 1 that I would just want to see the continuation of that story. But now that I've played enough of it and that the prequel nature of it makes an appearance very early in the game, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, I think that I'm really happy with it.
I think it's okay. People know that John's in the game. People have talked about it all over YouTube and everything. It's been out there for a while. But as far as all that goes, playing, like if you know Red Dead Redemption and can remember parts of the story, the main key parts anyway, and I'm sure you will if this game impacted you at all, there's a lot of foreshadowing in this game, and that led up to that game. It's really good. I mean, I love the way they bring everything into it, where they bring those two games together. It's really good.
Mm-hmm. RJ, the wrestling guy, says he's happy it's a prequel because Modern Times, the first game, Blackwater, I guess, modern-ish, right? But I mean, yeah, I like the primitive nature of the beginning of this game. I like that. I think that that's what I think of when I think of a prequel to Red Dead Redemption. Like, I think when I think of the early parts of Red Dead Redemption and what would happen before that, I think of exactly what happens in the beginning of this game. So it's satisfying. I think it's really satisfying that the story is the way it is. And I think it took a lot of effort. I think it takes a lot more effort to come up with a prequel than it does with the sequel, to be honest.
Yeah. And to make it, this good, it's amazing. Like I honestly can't talk enough about it, but I'm sure, we're going to have to get into other topics as well. Right?
Absolutely. But before we do, really quick about this controversy, you spoke a little bit about it at the beginning of the show, Fonz, and I know you were one of the first that that kind of reported on this on Twitter, and people, like you said, people were kind of laughing at you and saying that you didn't know what HDR was and blah, blah, blah. And then it was confirmed. We got this picture right here, courtesy of Digital Foundry's analysis, where the lit up areas are the only ones that are in HDR, and the rest of it's in SDR. And you find this a lot during the game. A little bit of trickery was played on us. But, I'll just put it out there. In my opinion, I really don't even care that much. Like, if I have to turn, I actually did turn the HDR off to see what it looked like. Game is still gorgeous. Still looks incredible. One of the best looking games I've ever seen. So a lot of people are making this a big deal. I'm not even sure it's that big of a deal. I mean, I want to get you guys' opinion on it. Is it really that big of a deal?
No, it's not. Well, actually, I take that back. I will say that I wish it was in true HDR.
Yes.
I think that this game could have benefited greatly from like spectral highlights and stuff on the snow and water and stuff, and just it would have been really nice to have an added benefit to the game. But does it hinder my experience? Not at all. I think that this is something that while I do want it, it doesn't spoil the game. And I think that's what people have to understand as well. Like this doesn't mean that you can't enjoy the game. The game is still a gorgeous game. Turn off HDR, you'll see. Or that fake HDR, I should say. And it's actually damaging the picture more than it's helping.
Yeah.
Because it'll give you a little bit of a washed out look. And when you turn it off, you'll immediately see one thing. You'll see that the blacks are actually darker. They're black. And the colors just pop even more because they're not adding that wide color gamut for the HDR that you should have. So, I mean, you're not really benefiting at all. You're just hurting the image. So shut it off and adjust your picture accordingly after you shut it off.
Yeah. Assassin, did you take a Did you take a look at the standard definition mode, or you still left it on and don't really care either way?
I just loved it. I mean, the game looks gorgeous. Like, I mean, so I mean, it's fine with me. If it looks better and whatever, not HDR. It takes more steps to turn it off than it is to.
Yeah. See. Yeah. I understand that.
I don't know why they did that too. Like on the PS4 Pro, you can actually turn off the HDR within the game's menu, but with the Xbox version, you have to turn it off at system level. You have to turn it off in the Xbox, and I find it odd. I don't understand why they did that.
Yeah,
there are some games on the Xbox where you can completely just turn off HDR through the game. But
yeah, which games are those? I haven't found those.
2, I forget which ones. I'll look.
And it actually
I
works.
Know it exists. Never turned it on.
Wow.
I'd rather have it on.
Yeah.
Is that an Xbox thing, or is that a developer thing? Game developer.
It would have to be a game developer thing.
Yeah,
interesting.
That's what I don't get. Why Rockstar added it for the Pro but didn't for the X. Maybe that's one of the marketing deals, right?
More saddles and HDR.
Oh, man.
Yes.
So is that extra blurriness, I guess.
Yes.
It looks incredible on the X. I have to add that as well.
Oh my
Amazing.
God.
Gosh.
Yeah. One of the best looking games I've seen for sure. And honestly, like you said, you alluded to a little bit earlier in the show, Fonz, that as you get closer and closer to the end of the generation, you just get things that push the hardware to the limit, and things that just take you back, whether it's better games in general in terms of storytelling and gameplay, but also visually, obviously. And I mean, you just look at the 360. If you were a gamer, if people listen to this, you were a gamer then, look at the games that came out at the beginning and games that came out at the end. You'll just be blown away by the difference. It's looking like the same thing is going to happen in this gen. And when I saw Forza Horizon 4, and I was like, wow, that game looks damn good. And I saw God of War, and I was like, that game looks absolutely stunning. And then I look at this, and I'm just like, man, I mean, are we going to get to a point where it's going to be equal, or are we just going to keep up in the visuals? Because I thought by now we'd kind of be on a level field, with the PS5 maybe getting announced soon, maybe coming in the next 18 months. I thought that we were gonna get to a level point pretty soon, but I mean, everything I'm looking at is just like up in the ante lately. Let me see here in the chat really quick. Xbot says it's a big deal if it's touted as a feature but not really isn't implemented, just like people who bash PlayStation for 4K when it's checkerboard. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that, but I mean, obviously it is touted as a feature. It's on the cover, it's on the box. Obviously Rockstar has an HDR slider that is very prevalent. So obviously, they're trying to, I don't know if they were intentionally trying to just fool us with that or what. But, I mean, obviously they were making it seem like that slider was making a difference with the HDR content, and obviously it's not. So,
I think HDR, the implementation anyway, seems sort of an afterthought.
Mm-hmm.
One speculation that I've heard Dealer tell me was that he was thinking maybe since this game was in production for almost 8 years, that maybe since they started this game before HDR was ever really a thing, in TVs anyway, that they really didn't have their minds set on that. So maybe some of this stuff was just never encoded into the game to begin with, this wider color gamut and everything. So maybe trying to implement that may be a bigger issue than they initially thought. Maybe I don't know how they're going to add it into it without putting in some work, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even you think of something like HDR and how much of a difference it makes on the game and the visuals. And yeah, I think you're right to assume that it's probably a huge deal, especially when, this was towards the end of the cycle when HDR really caught on. Consider recently when all that nonsense was coming out about the crunch time, and devs, some of the developers that were working on this game came out and gave statements to Kotaku about it. And one of them talked in detail about the fact that very recently in the development cycle of the game, they decided to put the cinematic segments with black bars on the top and bottom Did you guys hear about
Yeah.
this? That initially it wasn't supposed to be like that, and then very late in the cycle they were like, okay, we decided that it'll probably be best if we put the black bars on the top and bottom. Now to me, I think, okay, you're gonna put black bars on the top and bottom, not a big deal, just put black bars there, right? But apparently they had to alter every single cinematic shoot for that to make sure that the staging was right, that the lighting was right, everything. They had to redo essentially all of it. So for something as simple as that you think would be such a simple tweak, I mean, HDR is probably a bit, a couple notches up on the rung for that from that. So yeah, I mean, that's a really good theory, I think, Fonz.
Yeah. I think it's the most plausible at this time. We haven't heard anything from Rockstar yet comment on this situation. I know they commented on the blurry situation with the Pro, that they're going to try to fix that. Maybe knock it down to a 1440p, resolution, because right now I guess they're checkerboarding it, and I think that's the issue that's causing the blurriness. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens.
We will see. That's Red Dead Redemption 2. I think we got to move on here just for the sake of time, and we could talk about this, like Fonz said, hours and hours and hours, but we will not bore you with constant talk on this thing. We will move on to other stories this week, such as this nonsense. The PlayStation Classic has now been completely revealed, I should say. We got a little bit of a teaser reveal. We got the price. We got a few games. We got what the system was going to look like and the release date, but we didn't have the full 20-game lineup, and now we do. And it's all laid out right here on this slide, and color me unimpressed. I am very unimpressed with this. I think this is just opening the doors for Nintendo to come in with another classic console, maybe a little bit cheaper, maybe even the same price, with a stellar N64 lineup, and just blow this thing out of the water. And I know there's going to be PlayStation diehards that will defend this till their death, but for me, I think there are a lot of games that are very sketchy for inclusion on this. I think that a lot of these games are not PlayStation classics, and
Yep.
I just don't know what kind of arrangements that they've had with some of the publishers and the game studios to get these games on there. If it costs them less money, I don't know what is going on behind closed doors. Obviously, Nintendo with their first party stuff, they have all the say in getting it on there, so maybe it's a little bit easier for the N64 games to make an appearance. But Clowns, I think I'll go to you first on this, since we didn't hear a lot from you about the Red Dead thing, because you haven't really played it a ton. What do you think about this lineup? Is this encouraging? Are you going to get this thing now, or are you not even considering it? What are your thoughts on this?
I hate to say this, but the early days of like those 3D physics and graphics, I was not a huge fan of. I like Twisted Metal. I like the South Park. What was it, like the go-kart thing on ice, whatever? I can't remember it, but I like that one. Games I wasn't a big fan of. I wasn't a fan of Tekken. I didn't like it at all. I probably skipped over most of it. Never even played Oddworld. Rayman, I remember from the Sega Saturn. I love that game. Never played that on the PlayStation. Evils back then because I thought they looked too choppy. Just, I don't know, man. Like, they have other games that hit with nostalgia harder than these. It's a miss, but it's going to sell because it's PlayStation. I mean, people are going to buy it because people buy the Nintendo stuff because they love Nintendo. It's going to sell, but I'm going to skip over this thing.
Fonz or Assassin on this?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Assassin. Go ahead.
I'm definitely, I guess I wasn't happy about this because, like, I haven't personally really played any PS1 games. And then I played Spyro, and that was it. It was, like, so many years ago. So, like, I don't know. I wasn't really expecting much of anything. I knew I wasn't going to get it from day one. Expensive, and the game. And if I had one, like, they probably weren't that interesting.
Yeah, I think, you mentioned Spyro, and that's kind of like a glaring omission here, and I understand, and so is Crash Bandicoot, two games that definitely defined, the PlayStation 1, and I think, obviously, we've seen the remaster, the trilogy for Crash Bandicoot, we're going to see the one for Spyro, in a few short. I think what is it? Couple weeks now. I don't really know the release date of Spyro. I'll look that up.
End of November.
Towards the end of November, yeah. So that's coming out. That was one of the worst kept secrets on planet Earth. But I think probably that influenced, the games that were included on this, because I think if those things didn't exist, those would be included on this, and then this thing would sell like crazy, would blow the N64 counterpart out of the water, because those are games people are obviously nostalgic for. Crash Bandicoot sold extremely well, still selling pretty well. Everyone's anticipating Spyro. So those are games that could have been included on this, if those trilogies never were a thing. And, fill those in for like Grand Theft Auto or like Rainbow Six. Like, who's going to go back and play Rainbow Six without a right joystick? Like, that's a mess. I don't know. Fonz, what do you think, man?
Well, when I think of PlayStation, I think of immediately, the top game that comes to my mind is Final Fantasy VII. Okay, that's the one game I played a crap ton on this console, Also, I know Tekken 3 was really big. There's quite a few here. Siphon Filter, you have Twisted Metal, Metal Gear, things like that were really big. But then you have others here. There's a lot of fillers, I would call them.
Oh, yeah.
Games that, like Jumping Flash and, Odds World, and these games that weren't really, when you think PlayStation, these don't jump out at you, they just don't. So I just find it odd. You're completely right too when you mention Rainbow Six. Like, nobody's going to go back and play that.
Mm-hmm.
Even as I remember Battle Arena Toshinden, I remember playing that on the PlayStation. But I also remember it being not that great of a fighter. Like, there was way better games out there. Tekken 3 is on it, and that is way better than that. Like, I think a lot of these are fillers, and it is definitely a cash grab. That's all this thing is.
Yeah, Supersonic Station nailed it in the chat. Definitely a cash grab. And the sad thing about the filler thing that you're talking about, the sad thing about that is that the PlayStation lineup does not need fillers. Like, the PlayStation lineup was one of the deepest lineups in gaming history. I mean,
you could have even put like Gran Turismo 2 on there. You could have put Soul Reaver. You could have put games on there that really meant something to some people. Like for me, Soul Reaver, if that was on there, that would have been amazing. Castlevania,
yep.
There were so many games back then that really meant a lot to people. And as a PlayStation fan, as a gamer, I just don't like what I see here for the most part.
Yeah, like, for instance, you see in this slide that they put out as promotional material, they have what they consider as the heavy hitters, like actual pictures, right? The Final Fantasies. They think GTA is going to be a heavy hitter. I don't think that game aged well. Obviously, GTA is popular now, but it's a completely different game. Can't be even held in the same regard. Metal Gear Solid, obviously a huge hitter. That's what a lot of people are going to be playing. Twisted Metal, big hitter. Tekken 3, Clown says he doesn't like it. I thought it was pretty good. I mean, for those, all things considered, I thought for that generation, pretty good fighter. Ridge Racer Type 4, good racer. And then they just list the other ones. You know what I mean? It's like they already know that those are the heavy hitters, and then everything below this, it's like we got to fill out the lineup.
Daz in chat said Medieval. They just have a remaster coming out of this game. Why not just throw the old one on here for good measure? I mean, come on, that was a big game for them. I don't get this list. It's funny. It's like everybody was so excited for this when it was first announced. Then the list comes out and you're like, filler. Oh, great game, filler. It's like, come on.
Yeah, and they I think they announced it so well too. I mean, the price I wasn't too huge of a fan of, because $100, I agree with Assassin on that. I think it's a little too rich for people's blood, but people are eating up retro games, so some people are just willing to pay that, so they're gonna hit that market. But I think they launched it perfectly. They announced a few of the games. They left people wondering in the interim what was going to be included, and that kept it fresh in people's minds. And now this thing's due out in a month. They finally let the list out of the bag, and it's this, like, way to kill any kind of hype,
I'm even thinking of games like Tomb Raider, Silent Hill. I mean, there were so many games that I played back then that they just missed completely. I don't know. It's sad.
Clowns, what were you thinking was going to be on this that didn't make an appearance?
I'm really surprised that Tomb Raider didn't make an appearance because that's one thing that's synonymous with the PlayStation 1. I mean, there's so many people that had PlayStation 1 and got Tomb Raider, and there was even like articles back then about going to this, but like they made a big deal about the cleavage back then for Tomb Raider. Everyone out and bought it.
Remember the nude code or whatever? Remember the code that there were people like, oh, you can put in a cheat code and get her nude. Remember that was a huge thing?
Yeah, I mean, people went insane over Tomb Raider. That thing that would have sold like hotcakes if it had Tomb Raider on there. And to be honest with you too, I'm kind of surprised that deal with Madden to get Madden on there, because I remember on PlayStation 1, I used to play Madden with my cousin like all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised there isn't a sports title too. I mean,
you know what? They had Game Day.
Game Day, they had NFL Game Day. They had their own 989. They had their own sports studios. They had iconic sports studio games. Like,
damn, that good point, man, on the sports stuff.
Yep. Or like X Games.
The NFL partnered with Microsoft.
Wasn't what?
Well,
the NFL partnered with Microsoft. I mean, actually,
well, maybe.
Well, Game Day had, but I don't know if they can use the old license. Players from Game Day, but that may be an issue.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, maybe. Or even like X Games. Remember those X Games ones for the PlayStation? I thought those games were pretty good, where you like roller skated, skateboarded, stuff like that. Or like a Tony Hawk, an old Tony Hawk game or something like that.
There you go. Instead of Cool Borders too, you could add Tony Hawk.
Yep. Siberia says he played the shit out of Tekken 2. He still has all the games he wants to play on his PlayStation, so Sony isn't going to get any more of my money. And that's kind of the danger that I think that these companies are approaching when now we're getting into, that next generation level, where N64 and PlayStation level. I think some people are still holding on to those, so you're going to lose out in a little bit of that market. Whereas with the NES and the SNES Classic, unless you're a diehard, maybe you didn't hold on to those kind of things. And there's way to play. There's way more ways to play now, like these PlayStation Classic games, whether it be the Vita or the PlayStation 3 or some of these games you can play like that and buy them digitally, so it's not as big of a deal. So that's a good point, Siberia, in the chat. But nonetheless, I mean, playing the games on like the actual hardware or something that resembles rather the actual hardware, I think that's a huge deal with a lot of these retro gamers. And that's why I think these things are still going to do well, but not with a lineup like this. I mean, if you're buying this and you're a PlayStation fan and you're anticipating all these games, like, God help you, man. Honestly, like, if you're going in, you're like, I can't wait to play Cool Borders and Jumping Flash, man. I remember that in my demo disc. Like, if you're thinking like that, I mean, God help you, man. I mean, you really are a diehard because, geez. Oh, my God. Yeah. UK Dazzler says, how much does a disc copy of Final Fantasy VII go for? On eBay, they're relying on the title. I mean, that's true, too. I mean, Final Fantasy VII, extremely collectible. So to play the original version of it, on something that resembles original hardware, I mean, that has value too, but I mean, that's about it, right? Intelligent Cube, like, I don't know. Let us know if you're in the live chat, or if you're not in the live chat rather, and you're watching this later. Let us know on Twitter or in the chat below or in the comments. Let us know, what you think about the PlayStation thing, because I think it's a big miss. And I think apparently the N64 Classic is going to be announced soon, or very highly rumored, and it's all but confirmed, I guess. So, huge opportunity for Nintendo to kind of just blow this thing out of the water, in my opinion. All right, really quickly, I want to mention that Evolve PR very graciously gave us a review copy of Call of Cthulhu, and we are playing through. We got on PlayStation, so Clowns is going to be playing that and reviewing it for us. If you guys aren't familiar with this game, it is based on a old school pen and paper RPG. It's $60 on console, but only $40 on PC, which I think is really interesting when companies do that. I'm not a huge fan of that, being primarily a console gamer, but publishing and all that, I'm sure, printing games on disc and all that, makes up for a little bit of that cost, and they got to make that money back. So But I haven't played any of this game. I have been watching it like a hawk because it does have my interest. The subject matter has my interest. And if you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend that you watch some videos on it. It is very much like a walking simulator, though. So if you're not into those kinds of games, you need to watch out for that. But it does have a really compelling story, which is this investigator, this detective, if you will, is investigating the homicide killing of a family in Darkwater town, and it is it gets a little bit into the occult, so it takes a lot of turns along the way. There's RPG elements, so think about Telltale games where you pick different choices and in dialogues, and those can affect the gameplay. Think about that, but with RPG elements. So consider maybe if you have a high intelligence level, then you can outsmart the person you're talking to get more information out of them, stuff like that. So Clowns, do you have anything to say about this game really quick? I know you're gonna do a full review on it, but do you have anything to kind of add to what I've said?
No, unfortunately, it's been pretty hectic, so I haven't had a chance to jump into it. But I'm probably going to do so right after this podcast because it does look very interesting, and it has a lot of ties to H.P. Lovecraft, and like you said, the RPG elements are there. So it looks like a very exciting title into his horrific world and mystery. It's very exciting.
This game. I was wondering, where did I hear this name before? Because it was a board game. Now I know what you're talking about. I just looked it up. I go, yeah, I remember this as a board game. Games like this, though, video games like this, these walking simulators, some of them have fantastic stories and can be really fun to play through. Last year, one of my favorite games of the year was What Remains of Edith Finch.
Yes.
And that was a walking simulator, but it was a great story. So this could be a fantastic game. Who knows?
Yeah, it's very polarizing on the reviews. A lot of people can't get over the fact that it's a $60 walking simulator, essentially. A lot of people love it because the story is amazing and are huge fans of H.P. Lovecraft, who is the creator of the original story and the RPG pen and paper game, and so it's derived on that. So a lot of people are huge fans of it. I know IGN rated it extremely high. I've been seeing a lot of scores in the 8s and 9s. But Clowns is going to give his totally own score and is going to review it for what it is. And that may be great, like a 10 out of 10. And sometimes with Clowns, you never know. It may be like a 4 out of 10. So can't wait to see on that. But yeah, everything I've seen, it's very interesting. But you gotta be careful with some of these walking simulators if you're not into them. If you're into them, I mean, they can be really immersive. This game, I guess, on the shorter end, you could probably get through it in 7-8 hours. On the longer end, you could take your time, investigate absolutely everything, and it'll be 15 hours. So, I mean, the gameplay is there. It's just, be careful on it, and definitely watch some streams and stuff because I think that will help you on buying decisions. Edith Finch is very immersive. UK Desert says yes, and that's what the things with these games like that. A lot of people are just looking for a game to sit back and take in a nice story, and if you are, I think actually this game will be right up your alley. So you should definitely look out for our review in the future and check out some streams on Twitch and YouTube and Mixer and all those things. So okay, speaking of we're talking about leading into the holiday season. We're talking about Red Dead Redemption releasing at the perfect time to garner that interest, and we talk about at the end of the year we're just stacking on all these games, and Call of Cthulhu, we that game came out October 30th and was very, very brave to release right after Red Dead Redemption 2, to say the least. And we've seen a lot of developers move their games to strategically place themselves in the holiday season. So a news story came out recently. Clowns kind of ticked me onto this, and I wanted to get his opinion on this first because of that. We're leading to the holiday season. It seems like the Switch sales are dropping a bit, and that the Steam, in that train is kind of running out. And the PlayStation, of course, is making huge strides, and obviously selling extremely well. So, Clowns, Do you expect this trend to continue? I know there's a couple big first-party games coming for Nintendo, but what do you think? Do you think that this is going to continue, or do you think Nintendo is going to resurgence with Smash Brothers and other stuff like Let's Play Pikachu and stuff like that?
No, I think Nintendo does everything for shock value, right? Like, I think they'll put out something that gimmicky, but it works for the time and it gets everybody's interest. It sells a whole bunch, and then people are like, "Oh, well, I don't really care about playing it this way anymore." You know, kind of like they did with the Wii. So I think the Switch is kind of like it's dived down, and they're releasing these other games at the proper times to bring the sales back up, especially with. I mean, like, you know, people are going to go back just for that game. Pokemon, people are going to go back just for that game. So Nintendo knows what they're doing. They're bundling Diablo 3 with the Switch at GameStop as well, I believe. So that's another thing that they're trying to do. I think after all these games, other bigger titles coming out, I think it's going to start diving again. On these little niche sales here and there, these little bundles, upgraded versions here and there. And Nintendo recently released some information that they're fully focused back on the 3DS as well. And Nintendo may know that the Switch may start taking a dive eventually, especially with next gen coming right around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
So pushing the 3DS and getting more publishers on the 3DS again and getting more games out there, it's going to pick up their portability. Because it's, I mean, let's face it, the 3DS is cheap. It works great, and there's a whole bunch of things to do on it, and kids love it. So, love them to death, but I just think they look for quick
what? That didn't come through the mic. Quick what?
ways to make money.
Yeah.
I the way I look at it though is Nintendo. I think for the holiday season, I think it'll pick up a little bit for them because there's still a lot of people out there that want to get these Switches. But yeah, I don't think sales necessarily are going to take a huge dive, but yeah, maybe a little bit of a dive, considering what sells consoles is games at the end of the day. And I don't know when was their last big game that was when was that drop? Their last big one. Been a little while, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a hot minute. Mario Tennis, I think.
I think that's pretty much the reason why we're seeing a little bit of a dive here. And, you know, once they release their big first-party titles, I don't know what they're going to release to really keep this thing afloat or, you know, to get people to buy this console. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, Nintendo is notorious for dropping their big games, and then that's all they pretty much have is their big first party titles, their Marios, their Zeldas, their Metroids. Mm-hmm. They got a bunch of them, but once those are done, then what? You know, it's kind of like, okay, what now? A bunch of ports.
Yeah, I mean, that's essentially the strategy. The bunch of port strategy is what's been going on this gen, right? We most recently got Diablo 3. I mean, for all intents and purposes, excellent port, but that game came out on the Xbox like 4 years ago, almost 5 years ago, and you know, came out on PC like 10 years ago. Like, come on.
Yeah, and let's not kid ourselves. These ports of games like this don't look very great. You know, as good as they can be on the Switch, that if you've got it on the X or the PlayStation, why would you go to that?
Yeah,
unless you just want the portability aspect. And I totally get that. So that's a lot of the reason why people bought the Switch is to take it anywhere, take it on the go. But just like Clowns was saying, is the 3DS is still a huge deal, and lots of kids have these 3DSs. I know my son plays his 3DS all the time, and he loves it. So that's still a big deal for Nintendo. So completely going away from that would be just a complete disaster for them. So it's good to hear that they're focusing on 3DS again. I did not know that, so that's pretty good to know.
Yeah. I think maybe they realized that the perception was that they were dropping the 3DS, because I know that was definitely the perception. Obviously, the Switch is handheld as well, so and costs more, and so you know, the push was for that. And of course, this thing came out, you know, just like 2.5 years ago. So they're obviously still trying to create steam for this thing. And it's been a huge success, but like you said, the install base on the 3DS is huge. They still need to go back to that. And I think overall, if you consider 3DS sales and Switch sales this holiday, they're going to kill it. I mean, I've already seen the Black Friday deals for some of the Switch stuff, and a lot of it is really compelling. I think that the bundles being cheaper, I think is going to get, parents to finally maybe make that plunge that they hadn't made because their kid has a 3DS. So I think you're right, Fonz. I think once we get into it, it's gonna be a hands down win for Nintendo. Even though Sony does have, I guess, a PlayStation deal going for Black Friday for the slim PlayStation with Spider-Man for $199. I think that's an awesome deal, but Nintendo always seems to do really well.
Born Distracted in the chat said it didn't feel like a console to him, so he no longer has a Switch. Mm-hmm. And I get that, because to me, when I look at the Switch, to me, it's a handheld that can be displayed on your television. That's the way it looks to me anyway. And I know some people feel like that. So it's just not as strong as the other two. And it's one of the reasons why I didn't buy it. I'm not into handhelds, so I didn't want it. I had no use for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you got to be, like you said, I mean, the ports just don't look as good. If it was on like a level playing field, you may be convinced if, you can dock it at your TV and it's at, nearly the same level, but there's compromises everywhere when it comes to the ports. I mean, it's not just visuals. If it's not visuals, it's FPS, it's controls, it's always something.
It's always, it's honestly, it comes down to the games as well. The Marios really don't do anything for me anymore. Even the Zelda, it looked good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to trash on it or anything. Mm-hmm. I'm sure because a lot of people loved it. But it just doesn't do anything for me anymore. The one thing though, the one compelling argument I have that I'm torn with is the fact that, a new Metroid's coming, and I love Metroid. Mm-hmm. I loved Metroid. All the iterations of Metroid, since the NES on up, I've loved. So that one game could get me to buy the Switch, and I hate to say that, but man, it's all about the games at the end of the day, and Metroid has always spoken to me, so we'll see.
Yeah, and I feel like maybe they're holding Metroid out a little bit, maybe for next year. Like you said, once those games come out, what do they have? I think they're very strategically spreading out their first party stuff, and they know that maybe early on the diehards that aren't really into the Mario stuff, like what they would call like more kiddie stuff or more child targeted stuff, once that's done, maybe they'll get people over later in the cycle. I think they're playing the game very well. So I was actually surprised to see this story pop up. But at the same time, Nintendo's always been smart with this kind of stuff. They maybe they haven't been smart on creating a console that can compete in terms of technology, but we've seen it time and time again. They've been smart on spreading the wealth of the little capital that they have, so to speak, in terms of games in their library for first party stuff. And some new first party stuff has arisen, like the Splatoons, the ARMS, that kind of stuff to make, other compelling additions. But, like you said, it's all about the Marios. It's all about the Marios. What are your clowns?
One thing I want to say real quick that I think that Nintendo bites themselves in the foot with is that their party chat system is pretty bad. And I think a lot of gamers in the future are going to be frustrated with that, especially if they want to play online, like, it's Splatoon 2, Mario Kart 8.
Yep.
It's these things that Nintendo does that irks a lot of hardcore gamers. I mean, kids and casuals, some of them might be like, okay, well, I don't care about voice chat, I'll just play the game. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot, like, if I'm playing with you or Assassin, I like to be in a party chat and talk with you guys and be like, oh man, I just beat you in Mario Kart, or I just knocked you off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It feels lackluster. And on top of that, there's some talk now on Twitter that I saw. I haven't confirmed this yet, but according to what I've read, that Super Smash Brothers has its own separate app and work with the regular Nintendo app.
Oh, I haven't seen that. Interesting. Very interesting. If that's the case, that is really, really interesting. Cause yeah, I mean the whole multiplayer thing has been a shit show, honestly. It should have just been baked into the system. You want to charge for it, fine. But the whole, listening on your phone while you're playing on your Switch, it's like, they haven't been very smart on that.
At that point, you might as well just give out your phone number, because who cares? Like, you're using your phone anyway. Like, I don't get Nintendo, but you know what? They've always, they've always put their products out the way they intend to, and silly as sometimes it is, the masses tend to buy it up regardless, whatever they're given. They come out with a console that's very, very underpowered, and people still bought millions of them. It's still a hot selling item, or it was until this little dip, I guess. But I'm just kind of over Nintendo. Like,
yeah,
I just wish that they would conform a little bit. I mean, they don't have to go full in and do what everybody else is doing all the way, but work with the gamers a bit, because gamers everywhere, even the Nintendo fans, wish that their online system was better.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're tired of like, you can friend me at 56796Z543. Like, give us actual names and stuff. Like, do the right thing for the gamers. Damn it,
for the gamers. All right, Assassin. Last word on this. I know you are one of the people that is in the market for a Switch. You actually are a fan of some of the stuff that you haven't been able to play the past couple of years. And what do you think, man? Is this gonna continue, or is Nintendo gonna make the comeback and come out the winner this holiday?
And I feel like some people are just waiting for Black Friday at this point, and some releases like Super Smash.
Yeah, I mean, that has to do with it a lot. Like, when people are saying, "Oh, the Xbox One S isn't selling well," the One S isn't selling well. Well, Microsoft announced that there was a more powerful thing coming, so that impacted a lot of people. So, I mean, when you know that something is on the horizon, it's a tough time traditionally for gamers or for gaming sales in general, leading up to the holiday. And then the holiday, obviously, it's a huge boom. But we've seen a little bit of changes. I mean, there's been game releases. September, October has been big now, when it used to be like November was a huge month. But yeah, I agree with you. I think people were anticipating the Black Friday deals. Now they're out, and people are liking what they're seeing, and I think it's gonna sell extremely well. All right, last topic of the evening. Really quick, we'll talk about this because we've kind of beat the whole cloud gaming thing to a pulp. But I found it interesting this week that the CEO of EA, what's his name, Andrew Wilson, came out and openly spoke about the cloud gaming future and how people should temper their expectations about the PlayStation 5 and the next Xbox, and if those platforms will be dueling it out in the same way that they have in the past, if we're going to get a dedicated, closed home platform, or if there's going to be more of a focus on the cloud gaming platforms and what they call a non-closed platform. xCloud was announced by Microsoft, and we talked about that in the show before, about how you're going to be able to play Xbox games on a variety of different devices streamed from the cloud. And Project Stream has been making a huge impact in gaming recently, because you can play Assassin's Creed Odyssey at full fidelity in your goddamn browser on a netbook. Like, it's really, really compelling to a lot of people. And an article came out recently on GameSpot that talks about how higher ups at EA, Bethesda, Rockstar, a bunch of these big companies that we talk about on a daily basis are really, really interested in the future of cloud gaming and not as interested in the traditional closed platforms. So you guys find this interesting? I know a lot of people are different on this, and whether or not they're ready for a cloud gaming future, or whether or not they're gonna stay physical going into the next generation. What do you guys think? Is this Is this kind of surprising news that the devs are really pushing for this to advance?
I guess my thing is it's not so surprising, being that, this digital era, the way it's going now, even with downloadable games and stuff, these companies, they can make more of that money back without having to push that physical copy out to stores, pay the retailer, and so forth. So I get it, but at the same time, like for me personally, I like having that hardware where everything is rendering on the box itself, not having to resort to or rely on internet for some of the things or anything. I like to play a single player game. If my internet goes out, so does the streaming gaming. I don't want to rely on that sort of stuff. So for me, I'm going to try to stay with this, physical hardware as long as possible. Hopefully, we don't run into a situation where the masses adopt, say, a streaming service 10, 20 years from now, and that's all that they want to do now. These companies just put out these little streaming boxes because as well as they're going to work, like I said, there's always a limitation somewhere. If it's not the titles themselves having a limitation, it's going to be your internet provider. It's going to be data caps. It's going to be something out there. So for me, it's a no-go for me right now.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be in the Fonzerrelli household when he's playing Red Dead Redemption 2 in the middle of a testy gunfight and that internet drops because Comcast sucks or whatnot. I wouldn't want to be there for that. That's for damn sure. Clowns, what do you think, man? I know you've been kind of testing a little bit of Project Stream. You've been talking about this movement that's going to happen in the gaming industry, whether it's going to come sooner or later. I know you're a huge proponent for 5G wireless internet, and how fast that'll be, and how that will enable this thing to really take over. But are you kind of surprised that these big companies, EA, Bethesda, Rockstar, are really pushing for and really favoring the cloud gaming future?
I predicted this like 4 years ago, and everybody said, "Oh, clouds are crazy. No one's gonna go digital. No one is gonna do anything like a Netflix of video games. No one is gonna want to play streaming games." And I get that, man. Like, being an old school gamer, everybody likes their hardware. They don't like to rely on a third party to be able to play, and I get that. It's perfectly legitimate argument on the flip side of this, because as we see now with net neutrality going away, we see like Comcast throttling more, and we see them doing a lot more as far as data caps, like Fonz said. I mean, it's very true. They're trying to data cap almost everything in the Midwest all the way to the South Coast. It's ridiculous. And with 5G on the versions where it's at, quadruple the speeds of FiOS. 5G is going to be epic launches, and it is coming, and it's going to come soon. Samsung already has a 5G phone in the works for early next year. 5G will make you be able to play in the car, no lag. The latency is like 1 to 5 milliseconds. No matter where you are, 5G is going to reach almost everywhere, almost 90% of the US. It's going to compete with FiOS providers. And for example, T-Mobile said they are directly targeting Spectrum and Comcast areas to counter their data caps, to counter their throttling. Rumor has it, and I can say this as a rumor that I heard from someone, that Xbox is even thinking of 5G next hardware, some type of compatibility for 5G. And I heard that from a very reliable source. So I think game streaming is going to be here to stay. I think it's going to continue to grow, only because it offers these companies DRM protection at its finest levels. It's been way too easy to copy games on a local level through disk, bypass DRM on hardware. And with streaming, it's going to be very difficult to do that. You'd have to do like man-in-the-middle spoof attacks with certificates. It's going to be extremely hard. Microsoft is gearing themselves up with the Azure servers and the xCloud to be dominant in this. And their competition is going to be Google. It's going to be Amazon. And they're going to try to hold all these other companies like Bethesda, Rockstar, EA on their servers, whether they offer the service through xCloud or whether they offer it individually. So it's gonna, I think it's gonna grow. It's gonna be here to stay. I don't think physical hardware is gonna go away next generation. It might be for now. It might be another 10 to 15 years before physical goes away. But I think we are headed that route. We're seeing that with movies as it is, with Netflix and Hulu and big streaming services coming up. DVDs and Blu-rays are getting a lot cheaper. 4K is already on the way out. They got 8K that's already ready to go. It'll be ready on 5G as well. So yeah, media's going to keep evolving.
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Fonz. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, yeah, you're right about most of that stuff you were talking about, but I have to interject when you're talking about not only data caps, but when it comes to this 5G service with, say, T-Mobile or Verizon or whatever, they still throttle. I know when you get to a certain amount of data use per month, even on an unlimited plan, they will throttle you. They do it to me. So that's the kind of issues I still see going forward that need to be stopped. But when you have net neutrality out of the way, it scares me to think that some of these companies, because they can just go out and do these backdoor deals with anybody. They can do a backdoor deal with Xbox, say, okay, so T-Mobile is teamed up with Xbox. So anybody using Xbox on T-Mobile, you'll be fine. But if you've got Verizon on Xbox, you're going to get throttled through Verizon.
Yeah,
you know
good point on that. Yeah,
that sort of stuff. And that's where I don't like all this streaming stuff, like it's cool for some people if they really want to back this and this could be a great option for some people out there who are casual gamers or whatever. But if you put in a lot of time into gaming and play a lot of games, I could see where you can get throttled or something. If it continues down the road, it's been lately with all this throttling stuff. I noticed immediately after net neutrality went away, immediately because I have an IPT service, TV service. I pay for my TV. I pay a small fee per month and watch online. Okay. It's just a streaming service. As soon as net neutrality was gone, Comcast started throttling me and all my channels were buffering. And I was like, what the heck is this? So I looked into it and people were saying, yeah, Comcast is throttling you. Now I got to pay for a VPN and everything. And I don't have any problems going through that route. But again, I don't want to pay for things and jump through hoops just to play my games. Like there's going to be things that pop up that prohibit people from playing their games sometimes through streaming. And I don't want to sound doom and gloom, but it's just the reality we live in right now. I hope that things change in that respect if this does take off for people, because as I said, this is a great option for some people. If especially a cheap option, if you can play your games at a high fidelity at 60 frames or whatever with really low latency, that's amazing. That's awesome for people out there with decent internet, but it's just got to be decent internet. We'll have to see how everything plays out, but it's a great option, but I just don't want everything going that route.
So, Fonz, real quick, I just want to reiterate on what you said when you said, like T-Mobile can make a backdoor deal with like Xbox for XCOM, example like that. And that's very true. Without net neutrality, I think that will happen in the future, even with 5G. I think you're right that will happen. But I do want to say that I believe with a company like, like Microsoft, with how successful they are right now financially, that they would make a deal with all the ISPs, not just, one. So like, I would hope that they have a deal with Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T, all that stuff.
I get what you're saying. And but then, I have to look at the other side of the coin to say, so PlayStation users, if they, they use a streaming service, they're going to get screwed over because Xbox has the deal,
Oh yeah.
At some point there's gamers that are going to get screwed. And that's all I'm trying to say here is like, I want to see a world where gaming continues the way it is. Even if there's those streaming options out there, fine, that's great. But continue having some physical hardware in your living room that renders everything right there on the fly, because I don't want to be relying on internet for my gaming. That's all I'm saying going forward. I don't hate on anybody who wants to stream their games. That's cool. I have an NVIDIA Shield. I've tried it. I've had PS Now. I've tried it. It's just not for me,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's it gets into dangerous territory for the gaming industry in general, I think, when the experience that you have is determined by a utility provider, essentially. I mean, call internet a utility or not, a lot of people are, a lot of countries do recognize it as a utility. And if you ask me personally, I think we're getting to the point where it is a utility. And if the industry is depending on, and of course the industry depends on power. Like if you don't have power, you can't play video games. But if the industry is depending on like an outside factor to drive sales, to maintain its stability, I think that's dangerous, because what's going to happen if we go to, and I think that's something these companies aren't thinking of, by the way, because I don't think they're thinking about that too much. I think they're just thinking about their bottom line. In the interim, in the near future, I should say. But what would happen if these companies, like you're saying, do throttle, and that drives that gamer away from the gaming industry in general, and then that just drops sales because, they're going to be turned off by it because they know that they're being throttled, and, they can't do anything about it because of net neutrality, at least in the US. And that's that. They lose a sale because of the selfish and backdoor deal actions of Comcast or Spectrum or any of these companies. I think that's really dangerous.
And I've been on record as saying in the past that if everything went digital, the digital route, not even just streaming, but say downloadable games, I'd get out of gaming. But I've went back on that. And that's because as human beings, we all change our mind, right? Mm-hmm. We all go through phases and stuff. And at the time, that's the way I was feeling. So I'm not saying that in the future I would never try a streaming game or play streaming games. It's just that the things that are going around, that are going about around the whole industry with our ISPs, with net neutrality and things like that, until things change there, I definitely wouldn't go streaming game streaming. But as soon as, let's say if there was net neutrality in place and these ISPs weren't throttling and game streaming was wonderful and really low latency, yeah, of course I would try it. And I'd be a hypocrite if I wouldn't be a gamer if I was just walk away, and I don't think I could walk away completely from gaming, and if it did go that route, I would have to at least try it. So I'm not going to sit here and say that, one day I would never do that, play those games streaming. But, we all tend to just, we can change our minds on things, and, we'll have to see how it works out. Like I said, net neutrality is something that I think that is very important in this situation with all this talk of game streaming. Mm-hmm. It's very important.
Yeah, extremely. Kind of related, Bomber Dog says in the chat, if an ISP throttles you, why don't you just go with a different ISP? Well, I mean, ISPs are ridiculous. I mean, this may change when it goes to wireless 5G service.
You know what? I could answer that. In my neighborhood, there's only one other ISP to go with.
Exactly.
And they are horrible. The downloads and uploads are just horrible. The speeds are just no good. For my situation with all my kids, we stream everything. We all play video games online. There's no way we can cut it with that internet. So we are stuck with Comcrap or Comcast. And we use their gig service, and I have to pay an extra $50 a month just to get true unlimited service with them because of the data caps. With the data cap in place, I was going over every month, and one of my bills was $200 because it caps out at 200.
Wow.
And it went up there, and I was like, geez, what the heck is this about? And found out I had a data cap. I just never looked at my emails warning me, hey, there's a data cap in your area. So it sucks. And that just came about last year. So I heard more and more Comcast users across the United States are getting data caps now as well.
Yeah, I heard that. See, that cable companies are slimy, man. They are. They're really slimy. And that's why I think these companies have to be careful about wanting an all-cloud future. Yeah, there are huge benefits like Clowns mentioned, and Clowns made awesome points on it. But, I mean, you can't rely on some of these companies to be in your best interest, even if you have a lot of money to persuade them, because, internet isn't infinite, and so a lot of these companies have to make concessions in order to provide everyone with kind of a similar, piece of the pie, right? And some people do it with data caps, which I think is bullshit to the home. I think that's ridiculous. But
I can tell you this, that the founder of the internet, I can't remember his name, but he was really upset about net neutrality going away and all these other things coming up. So he's working on an internet version 2 where the access points would be free and you wouldn't have to rely on monopolies to connect. And
That's
I believe last I read on it, cable companies are trying to fight it, saying that to do that because it's still, hit some type of backbone. I got to read more into it, but it's pretty interesting, and it will create competition. But I mean, we could be many, many years away from it.
Right.
I just looked it up. I guess the guy's name is Tim Lee, or it's a co-founder with Vint Cerf and Tim Lee. I guess they're the co-founders of the internet. I guess I don't know. But anyway,
that sounds right.
It's not Al Gore, like Shanzu says in the chat. No, it's not Al Gore.
Oh man, only some of us older folks would relate.
We'll get that. Yeah. So Assassin, give us some takes on this, man. You've been quiet on this, but I know you definitely have opinions on this. I know your internet isn't the fastest, but I think it would work with this. So are you interested? Do you think it's a smart move?
I would miss my disk drive way too much. I have a bunch of movies that are all on disk, and be sad if play those movies because I use my Xbox as my
as a Blu-ray player. Exactly. I mean,
I'm with you, Assassin, when it comes to those movies. I have Netflix too. I watch Netflix shows and stuff. But when it comes to my movies, I gotta watch it in UHD, HDR, 4K. I need that disk drive. I need all that bit rate. That's what I need, because nothing takes the place of that high bit rate disk.
Yeah, I gotta be honest with you. I built up a decent library of 4K movies, and then I got an Apple TV 4K and watched some of the movies on there, and I was like, wow, these actually look really good for streaming. Like maybe I'll build up a little bit of a digital library too if the prices are right. Sometimes you can get an awesome deal, and then you've got the Movies Anywhere program, or if you buy it on Amazon or Google Play or Xbox even now, it comes over to Apple TV, so you can watch those. And then I went back and watched a 4K movie for the first time in a while, and I'm like, nope, the 4K disc is definitely way better. No question.
Yeah, especially if you have a good HDR television. Nothing takes the place of a good disc, man. Absolutely.
And that's the thing, like, what if your internet, like, that's a good point with the disk drive. Like, the disk drive, the throughput, for all intents and purposes, is not going to be altered significantly. Like, a disk drive has a certain amount of gigabit throughput, and that is what it is. Whereas with the internet, I have gigabit service to my house on Fios, and sometimes, if I'm using Wi-Fi, my throughput is dependent on Fios service and the proximity of my router and all these other factors, and sometimes my throughput's like 900 and sometimes it's like 90, so you got to consider that as well. Like the quality is going to take a dip, the responsivity is going to take a dip, these Twitch shooters that a lot of people like, nothing.
Yeah, that's one thing I noticed with PS Now and the NVIDIA Shield that I have. When I was streaming a game, and I know this is nothing like what we're getting with that Xbox streaming service or the Google streaming service, because I guess it's really low latency and you don't need that many megabytes down or something for. I don't know what the exact numbers are, but you don't need that high of a internet service,
right?
But for say PS Now, I noticed that when I was playing games, it wasn't just latency at times. Sometimes the graphics would degrade and you would see a lot of pixelation in the graphics as you were streaming the game. And it's like, wait, what's going on here? And that's because your internet would dip a little low and get a little, better. And you would the graphics would go in and out basically. And I didn't care for that at all. And I don't know, again, this might not be an issue with Google or Xbox with their streaming services, but yeah, that's not cool when it does that. That pixelation.
Mm-hmm. and you're definitely way more susceptible to that if you have worse internet than some people, and you're definitely way more susceptible to that if you have a family with everybody streaming like you do in your household, Fonz. It's not even,
Yep.
your gigabit becomes worthless when you've got, 25 plus devices. Like on my router, I've got like 30 devices, no joke. So, my Echo is gonna bite off a little piece of that pie, and even though an Amazon Echo doesn't take nearly as much data as streaming a video game would, it still counts. So it's interesting, very interesting. But other than that, I think that will be the end of this program. You can go back to playing Red Dead Redemption 2 now. Sorry that it went a little bit longer than anticipated, but we had a very good discussion with our resident outlaw here, with our excellent guest, Fonz. We really appreciate you coming on and taking some time away from your game of the generation potentially. So, like I said, we really do appreciate that, and we want to let you, go out and tell us where we can find you on the interwebs.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you guys. All of you were wonderful, man. It was great to be here and talk to this awesome chat as well. But yeah, you guys can find me at JFonzerrelli on Twitter and here on YouTube, JFonzerrelli. So you can find me, and I occasionally make videos, not as often as I'd like, especially lately. I'm doing a lot of gaming, people, and unfortunately, like, that takes away from making videos and stuff because I have a large family. I work a lot. This week I'm off. I'm on vacation, but again, gaming always takes precedence over these videos. But I will do a video, and my next video will for sure be a review on Red Dead. So look out for that.
Excellent. Yeah, we definitely will, because I watched a few of your Red Dead content videos. And I know you've been, highly anticipating the game, so you had some good videos about it before it even came out. And honestly, I think that when you get a video from somebody who really does care about it, it's just so much better, and you can just tell. You can just tell, even if they're not like 40 minutes long and they're just like quick spurt videos here and there. It's still very worthwhile content, and you guys should definitely go check out Fonz's YouTube channel. Even when family gets in the way, you still can put out some good stuff. So appreciate you coming on and talking about all these topics with us. Clowns is going to have some Call of Cthulhu gameplay up pretty soon, and he's going to have that review ready. So please look out for that on maybe our YouTube channel or our website, 4GwQPodcast.com. You can also find us everywhere. You just search 4GwQPodcast. You'll find us absolutely everywhere except Twitter, where we are 4GwQPodcast, because 4GwQPodcast did not fit the criteria of length. So anyways, we will let you guys get back to gaming. We appreciate you guys being here live. Congratulations to UK Dazarus, who apparently just won a copy of Red Dead Redemption 2 in some sort of giveaway. So congratulations to you on that, and we will see you guys next week. Peace.
Out.